Hello, my bookish darlings. I am here to unhaul more books for my bookshelf, which is already crammed pack. And these are boxes I have been hiding in my garage, and I found a couple boxes of hardcovers, so it's going to be exciting to go through those. And you may be wondering why I am dressed in a Star Trek uniform. Who am I? I am the BookTube goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. Here is our first box of books for today. I am hoping to go through 2 boxes. Like I said, they are rather heavy, and I believe they are mostly hardcovers. The first book is Deathgate by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. I have talked about this series before. It is my favorite Weis and Hickman series. It's called the Deathgate series, and unusually it is not a D&D book per se, but it is when they went off on their own and got out from under the D&D IP. Fantastic series, strongly recommend it. The premise of the story is this fantastic world filled with humans and elves and gnomes and dwarves was sundered into different parts between these 2 warring races. And ultimately it is about how sundering a world may not be a great idea. Next up we have China Miéville, signed by the author, the Iron Council. Let's take a look at his signature. There it is. China Miéville writes in what I call the diesel punk genre, and he puts the punk into his writing because it is raw and gritty and so unusual and fantastic. This is a great book. Strongly recommend. Maybe start with Perdido Street Station, but Iron Council is another one of the great ones. Next we have Martha Wells, Ships of Air. This is the book 2 of the Fall of Il-Yen. I fell in love with this series when I started reading it. I couldn't wait for them to come out in paperback, so that is why I have hardcover copies. It may look and even read a bit like fantasy, but it is grounded in science fiction. Next we have 28 Barbary Lane. This is the Tales of the City Omnibus Volume 1. And before in one of my boxings, I found Volume 2. Here they are, both compendiums of the Tales of the City novel, about Michael Tulliver and Marianne Singleton and Anna Madrigal. They've been made into several miniseries. Cannot recommend these books enough. No, they are not science fiction or fantasy, but they are just great tales of San Francisco from the 70s all the way to the aughts. And we have a book cover. Gregory Maguire's Out of Oz, and in my previous unboxing, I found what should go inside. Hold on. Here we are, Out of Oz, the hardcover, and I'm going to reunite it with its jacket. Out of Oz, the final volume of the Wicked series. And if you've seen the stage play, it is also a great work, but it is completely different than the series. Pick up Wicked if you haven't already, and if you enjoy it, go ahead and get the other sequels. Next we have Brissinger by Christopher Paolini. I've mentioned this one before. It is part of the Aragon series, or I believe it's called The Inheritance Cycle. And it's pretty hefty for a middle grade read. And yes, I agree it is derivative of Tolkien and other fantasy authors, but it's still, in my opinion, a fun read, especially the first book. Oh, can you just imagine a young boy finding a dragon's egg and raising the little hatchling up? It's a good story, cannot deny. Here we have Fires of Heaven, a Robert Jordan Wheel of Time book. And yes, this one does not have a cover either. Hopefully we will find it one of these days, or maybe I've lost it. I don't know. I still have a soft spot for the Wheel of Time books. Not so much for the Amazon Prime series, but that is another discussion. Here we have a couple of games floating around in the box. Uno, which I'm sure you've heard of, and something called Pooh. Here we have a hardcover of a Brandon Sanderson book, Warbreaker. This is a standalone fantasy novel, although it can fit into that Cosmere universe that Sanderson has created. But if you're looking for a standalone fantasy by Sanderson, this is kind of fun. The magic system is intertwined with color. Next we have George R.R. Martin, Feast of Crows. We've talked about Game of Thrones often enough. I am a big fan of the series and hope one day it will be finished. Here is something a little unusual, which I got for a readathon in BookTube at one point, Forget Me Not by Ellie Terry. This is a novel in verse. It is also a middle grade novel about a young girl with Tourette's. If you want your heartstrings to be pulled, check out Forget Me Not. Next we have a Jim Butcher novel, Academ's Fury, Book 2 of the Codex Alera. If you are interested in modern fantasy, you've probably heard of Jim Butcher, especially the Dresden Files novels. Well, this is not part of the Dresden Files novels, but another fantasy series that is quite well done. And finally, we have another Robert Jordan, Book 10, Crossroads of Twilight. I just adore these original book covers. That is it for this box of books. Let's move on to another. This is a plastic box, and I knew it was hardcovers because you can kind of see them lurking about inside, waiting for us to pull them out. Oh my goodness, at the top of this box is another signed copy by one of my favorite authors, Naomi Novik. Victory of Eagles. This is one of the Temeraire dragon novels. And if you want to see her signature, there it is, Naomi Novik. These Temeraire dragon books are delightful. Start with In His Majesty's Service. The books do get a little repetitive towards the end, but eventually she does wrap up the series. And they are just, in my opinion, very fun reads. It takes place during the Napoleonic Wars and imagines what if dragons existed at that time and were used as machines of war. Next we have The House on Duro Street by Galen Beckett, author of The Magicians and Mrs. Quent. I really enjoy this author. He has sort of a Jane Austen style of telling, and I believe these are set in the Regency period, at least from her clothing. And he's fallen off my radar. I hope he is still writing because his books are delightful. And if you like fantasy and Jane Austen, check him out. Next we have, I'm just pulling all three of these books out at once because they are all Harry Potter. Now you may have opinions of J.K. Rowling, so do I, but I still believe these are good books, even though I may not purchase any more for books going forward. But I know for many of you, these are truly nostalgic and part of your childhood, and don't let anyone take that away from you. Next, we have Kushiel's Avatar. If you have not read Jacqueline Carey, and if you have not read anything that is fantasy inspired by a French background with sort of a odd religious twist, dipped in sex and all forms of different fetishes, you need to read a Kushiel book. They are brilliant. The writing, by the way, is some of the best I've come across. Next we have Garth Nix's Keys to the Kingdom, Lord Sunday. This may be the last book in the series. I've mentioned this series before. Garth Nix, it's a middle grade. I think they're a little expensive for a one-day read because if you are a serious reader, that's about as long as it'll take you with this large print. So I felt I wasn't really getting my money's worth, at least in terms of reading time. But if you can find this in the library or maybe a used bookstore, it is a wonderful portal fantasy. And we have Titans of Chaos by John C. Wright. Now, I enjoyed the series. I will not lie. It's sort of this magic school at the end of the universe with very powerful, strange children. John C. Wright does not like the gays. You can look him up on Google. I'm not really going to go into it, but I cannot lie that I think these are pretty good books and a pretty unique story. And next up is the autobiography of George Takei. I think I did a whole video on this before, and I found this in a used bookstore, and it is signed by George Takei. What I love about this novel is I thought I was going to get a lot of Star Trek, but instead I get his autobiography from when he was a young child, including going to Japanese relocation camps during World War II. And if you did not know, I am Japanese as well, and my mother was also in a relocation camp. Really strongly recommend this book, not if you like Star Trek, of course it does have Star Trek in it, but also the struggles of an Asian actor back in the 50s and 60s. Next we have Crown of Swords by Robert Jordan. I've mentioned him enough, and I have enough of his books. That you know that I enjoy the series. And look at that cover. Just look at it. Next we have a Sarah Ash novel, Children of the Serpent Gate, Book 3. And I know when I got this in hardback that I love this series so much that I couldn't wait for the paperback version. It has a gorgeous cover. I don't remember much of the story itself, but I do know that Sarah Ash is a very good writer and she should be read more. And finally, the very last book in this book haul is Jude Fisher, The Rose of the World. Now, just like the Sarah Ash book, this is book 3 of the Fool's Gold series. Again, I got this in hardback because I could not wait for it to come out in paperback, because I prefer paperbacks because they're easier to transport and I would read them on the train all the time. But this is another author that needs to be found again, Jude Fisher, and look at that gorgeous cover. And that concludes this week's unboxing book haul of books in my garage. I thought I was coming towards the end, but I'm finding more and more boxes the more I am sorting through what's in the garage, which is a lot. Let me know in the comments if there are any books that you've seen today that you want to read, or any books you have already read and have opinions about. And please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I've done so many of these unboxing videos. If you want to see another, I'll have one right here. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.